WWE Backlash 2025 takes place on Saturday in St. Louis, Missouri. The fallout from WrestleMania 41. We've got some interesting matches on the card, which currently is comprised of 5 matches, your usual sort of B-show routine for WWE these days. And we're going to make predictions for all 5 of them. So let's jump right into it. And we start with the 4-way match for the United States Championship. The champion, Jacob Fatu, defends against Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest, and LA Knight. We know kind of all the beef between these 4. Over the past little bit on SmackDown, we know more so, long-running feuds between Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest. These guys have been attached together for a while now. Jacob Fatu beat LA Knight at WrestleMania 41 for the United States Championship, and now they all meet to see who is going to emerge as the champion. Well, this is one where anytime you have these 4-way scenarios, one of the first things we're going to think of is kind of what happened at WrestleMania 41 with Braun Breaker, where it's like, okay, it's a multi-man match. This is the way you get the championship off of a guy without actually pinning him, right? Well, that's not the direction I think they're going to go here, because I think this is one where when I look around at the United States Championship and who benefits the most from it right now, based on where they are at in the WWE pecking order, I guess you could say, Drew McIntyre simply does not need the United States Championship. I said it going into WrestleMania. I think Drew's big thing coming out of it is going to eventually be somehow connected to one of these world championships, whether that is something with John Cena, which doesn't make a lot of sense right now based on the fact that Cena, is this dastardly heel. McIntyre, we know, is a heel, but is getting more cheers because the people are getting behind some of the truths that Drew McIntyre is dropping. But I don't think that's anything you're going to get to in the near future. Now, you could in some way possibly find an option to get Drew back to Raw if we have the draft and those kind of things where he can challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. There are lots of ways you could do this in the future, but all that to say, Drew doesn't need the United States title right now. I don't think LA Knight needs the title back, right? Jacob Fatu just beat him at WrestleMania 41. Wouldn't make a lot of sense for LA Knight to just simply get the championship back. So I don't think that's the route they're going to go here. And then with Damian Priest, he's a former world champion. We know that. But again, is the championship best on him? Is it going to do anything for Damian Priest as he is a former world champion? And certainly you've kind of seen him take a little bit of a step back in terms of the way he's featured. He did get moved to SmackDown, those things. And so Jacob Fatu is the only choice, in my opinion, here. Never say never, like I said, when it comes to maybe having your champion not get pinned and lose the title in a 4-way match, which we know is kind of a staple sometimes in WWE. But I just don't think Jacob Fatu losing is the right call here. I think eventually we're still getting to something with Jacob Fatu and Solo. Having the championship in play, even though you don't necessarily need it, could add a little bit more based on the idea when we go back to post-WrestleMania 40, Solo wanting to bring gold back to the bloodline, and that kind of started that whole thing that has eventually led us to where things are now. Jacob Fatu, I think, is your winner here. How does Solo get involved? Does he do something here that pisses off Jacob Fatu even more? That is certainly a possibility. And maybe, again, there is a chance that he could somehow cost him the title. I just don't think it's probably where we're headed. So Jacob Fatu, to me, is your winner and retains the United States Championship. All right, another championship on the line, as it is going to be Becky Lynch challenging Lyra Valkyria for the women's Intercontinental title. And this is one we know has come about rather quickly when it comes to everything that happened at WrestleMania 41. Becky replaces Bayley and then later revealed that she was the mystery attacker on Bayley, teams with Lyra, and they team up and they win the Women's Tag Team Championships against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. All is well with the returning Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria, the long-time sort of mentor-mentorees relationship between these two. And then everything changed on the Raw after WrestleMania when it was Becky turning on Lyra and setting up them, of course, after they lost the titles, now setting up this big personal feud between the two. And I've said, I think that they've actually done a really good job with the back and forth with these two. I think Lyra has probably been in the best role she's been in since she's on the main roster. Of course, yeah, she won the title previously, but I think this is the biggest high-profile thing she's done. And I think she's done pretty well in these promo segments with Becky Lynch. I've enjoyed them. And I think now we sort of see how personal that's going to get. It should be a thing where these two aren't just exchanging wrestling moves. This should be a fight between these two based on how heated it has gotten. And, I think that's where eventually what's the best outcome here, right? What gets you the most coming out of this when it comes to everything Lyra has said about Becky and kind of, her place in the women's division and, hogging the spotlight, all this kind of stuff, all the things that they've kind of pushed to push Becky's buttons here. Becky winning the championship would only further that, and I think that's probably the move that they go with here. So, to me, Becky winning gets you a lot more interesting possibilities coming out of this. I know the thought will be, well, Becky doesn't need to win the Intercontinental Championship. She just won the tag titles, lost them a night later, overshadowed Bayley. Bayley didn't get an opportunity. I get all that stuff, but I think you're kind of going to play into this in somewhat of a different way than kind of the Charlotte argument, right? And again, this is a completely different situation. But, we talked about kind of the backlash, I guess pun intended, with Charlotte and her having all these title opportunities and all these other things in the past, and that kind of built up the frustration from the fan base and everything like that. This is different, but it is one where I think Becky winning here and then eventually maybe, Lyra winning the title back is a much more effective way probably to proceed forward here, because if Lyra beats her, then what, right? I mean, you're just kind of back where you started, and I don't know that that's probably the best course of action. So I'm going to go Becky winning the championship here. I think that would probably kind of tie into the story a bit more. It should be a good match. I think, again, these two know each other well, and I think it will make for a pretty entertaining showdown between these two. But I do want to see, again, this be a pretty aggressive match based on the fact that these two have exchanged some pretty deep cuts when it comes to what they think of each other after Becky's turn. So Becky winning, to me, is probably the best route here to kind of give you more fuel for what's to come, which we know is probably not just one match in this series. It's going to be multiple matches between these two. Another championship that is on the line will be the men's Intercontinental title, as Dominik Mysterio will defend against Penta. We've seen this match before, but as always, with kind of these combinations with these Intercontinental Championship matches, there has been some sort of shenanigans, interference, something like that, right? We've seen this over the last bit, even going back to when Braun Breaker was the champion, because you have all these different guys in the mix that led us to the Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania 41. Dominik wins, and we know still the story here is the ongoing tension between Dominik and Finn Balor. And how does that play into this match potentially? We mentioned earlier, could you have something with Solo maybe costing Jacob Fatu the United States Championship? Or how does that rift get forwarded here on this particular show, knowing that's kind of your primary story with Jacob Fatu right now? It's the tension with Solo Sikoa. For Dominik, it's the same thing. It's the tension within the Judgment Day that is mostly focused on Finn Balor. Now, we already know that Finn Balor is going to take on AJ Styles next week. And AJ has said he's coming after the championship no matter who wins this match. Well, based on the fact that we do already know that we are getting Styles versus Balor, I mean, I think it makes it pretty clear here that keeping the belt on Dominik is the choice that's going to make the most sense for pushing forward this stuff with AJ Styles, right? Sure, you could add Penta into the mix as the champion, and I know there will probably also be an argument, do you really want Penta to lose kind of again in this spot? Now that this is kind of another opportunity at the Intercontinental Championship, he comes up short, but you can also eventually tie that into, as we've said before, teasing the eventual reunion of the Lucha Brothers here, and somehow you get Penta and Phoenix back together. Maybe that's an option they work with in the draft, although I think right now they're still doing just fine by themselves. But if you want to go that route, get them on the same brand, put them back together where they can still do single stuff, but also have the tag team element involved, then I think you've got something there coming out of it. If somehow the numbers game gets Penta again, right? JD McDonough has now come back. He's played a role in this stuff. So if that's the thing here, where you have Dominik, JD, Carlito, Finn Balor, I mean, even, Liv and Raquel, we know Liv's away doing the movie. I would assume she's not going to be at Backlash, but Raquel's there. Like, how do all these people somehow help Dominik win? But we've said, too, the crowd reaction to Dominik's been fascinating, because there's some people that are totally buying the idea that, hey, we want to cheer Dominik now. WrestleMania 41, that was the case. So what's the crowd reaction going to be like? No one's really booing Penta, and so you're going to get some of the boos on Dominik's side. Dominik wins here, but I'm not as confident about this one when it comes to how this thing plays out, because I think, again, you could go a couple different directions, but the fact that they've already teased this with Styles and Balor, to me, Dominik winning tells the story. You can go to AJ Styles and Dominik, and then how does Balor get involved in that? There's a lot of ways you can go with this. So I'm going to go Dominik winning, but not really, again, probably a little less confident on this one than the other ones, not just from that standpoint. I still think Dominik wins, but I'm not sure how they're going to do this, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. A match that is going to be a glorious spectacle of pure destruction. I don't even know, that's a wild way to put it, but Pat McAfee goes one-on-one with Gunther. And to me, this is about as big of an easy prediction as it gets on this show. We'll get to the main event in a second. But this one, there is no scenario I can think of where Pat McAfee beats Gunther. It's just not going to happen. But it can't just be Pat McAfee going one-on-one with Gunther for 20 minutes. I think this has to be what we were teased with on Raw this week. And that was after McAfee said everything that he said, had the promo about this and that, and Gunther's kind of lost a step. He comes up short. He doesn't have that edge anymore. He's lost that ruthless aggression, if you will. Well, we saw Gunther step up to him and give him all the reasons how now that's all he needed, was to take this now in a different direction. And I think that's what we're going to see here. I think Gunther is going to absolutely destroy Pat McAfee. And he should. And some people will be cheering that. I guarantee you there will be many people in the crowd who will cheer the idea that Gunther is just taking out Pat McAfee here. And so that's what this has to be. Gunther comes off of losing the World Heavyweight Championship to Jey Uso at WrestleMania 41 in embarrassing fashion for the Ring General. He was embarrassed. He tapped out. The fans serenade him with the you tapped out chants every week now. Completely embarrassed. And the only way to respond was, for starters, doing what he did to Pat McAfee, choking him out, getting pissed off about him and Michael Cole yeeting and all this other stuff. But now that he's sat here and watched and listened to Pat McAfee run him down the way that he has, all that's there have to be consequences, right? All that has to change. And so I think this is going to be one where maybe initially you get Pat McAfee kind of going at Gunther, all that, just fired up. Pat McAfee, ready to prove himself, comes out in the first couple minutes, and he's just going after him. But then after that, I think it's got to be just absolute Gunther just squashing this guy. And I just feel like that's where we're headed with this because it makes the most sense. You want to make Gunther coming out of it, not just getting a win back, right? Because what does a win over Pat McAfee really mean? But it's kind of establishing the new attitude for the former champion. And just when everybody thinks that he lost a step, back-to-back WrestleMania losses here, right? One-on-one matches, the Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. Just when everybody thinks that he's slipping, all of a sudden, here's a new side, or he's decided to turn it back up a notch. And that should worry Jey Uso. That should worry all these other guys because now we're seeing what he's capable of again. And so I think that's the story you tell here. With Gunther, absolute lock that he's beating Pat McAfee here. The only way McAfee wins this match is if the referee disqualifies Gunther for taking it too far. That's the only way technically McAfee can win this match. He can't beat Gunther in a wrestling match. To me, this is going to be another fight, and it's going to be pure destruction with McAfee getting his ass kicked. Randy Orton challenges John Cena. These two, one last time in the ring. That is the tagline they're using, and it makes sense. We said when John Cena announced his retirement last summer, we knew during this farewell tour at some point John Cena and Randy Orton are going one-on-one again. To some people, haven't liked the idea that this was kind of a quick build here, right? Coming out of WrestleMania 41, you only had 3 weeks to get to this show. They've had to go pretty fast here. And you haven't had Cena for every single show, and so that's kind of, put the ball in Orton's court to try to tell a story and those things. I understand that. But this was one because you have seen it so many times before. I don't know that this was always going to be the top priority, right? I don't know if this was going to be the November-December match for John Cena where this is it. The final run, one last time, this is the final opponent, which we talked about. Who's going to be the final opponent for John Cena? That was one of the things we mentioned. You had some great arguments for Randy Orton potentially, for CM Punk, guys like that. Cody Rhodes, we mentioned, like all of these different guys, but now you kind of see how the way this is played out, the heel turn, everything. This is an interesting dynamic you have to work with. Of course, the biggest thing is the fact that it is in St. Louis. And I do have the callbacks, right, to John Cena going into enemy territory. All the times he's done this before. Go back to, Chicago with CM Punk, Edge in Toronto. And, of course, maybe the most notable one was Rob Van Dam in the ECW arena. at One Night Stand. Like, that is the hostile environment you're walking into. This may not be ECW, but John Cena is about to walk into a crowd that is going to eat him up when it comes to their love, Randy Orton, right? Because you can't always build up these kind of settings. Like, these are the kind of scenarios where this is perfect because you're doing it in St. Louis, and Cena now is this new Cena. Randy Orton, is the cheered one. Cena's the booed one. You're flipping the dynamic a bit, which hasn't happened, I guess, probably going back to their Ohio Valley wrestling days is maybe the only time it's ever been done like that. But now you do get this opportunity. For one last time, these two guys who know each other maybe as well as anybody in modern WWE history when it comes to what they do in the ring. And so, as always, I want to see what John Cena looks like in a main event match, singles match, where there is no partner, right? Like, it's just him. And we know the backlash, pun intended again, to the WrestleMania 41 match wasn't just the fact that The Rock didn't come out. It was just the match was not maybe what you expected from a WrestleMania level main event, because you had to do some things a little bit different because this isn't the old John Cena. It is, but it's in a different way, right? We're viewing that differently when we say old John Cena. He's not regularly wrestling week in and week out the way he was at one point. So you've got to do some things different. But I think the crowd's going to carry this. It's going to be all about the reactions. And it's, what do you do to convince people that Randy Orton can win this match? Because other than just the people who are Randy Orton fans, I don't know how many people are convinced that Randy Orton's going to win this match. Now, we've talked about before, you guys have mentioned in the live streams we did, once we knew this was happening. We knew this match was going to be taking place. Do they go back to the No Way Out 2008 callback, right? Where at that show, it was Randy Orton slapping the referee to intentionally get himself disqualified to retain the championship. If you do that here, you are going to have a very livid crowd. And maybe that's the point, is that this isn't a no DQ match. This isn't anything like that. It's straight up one-on-one John Cena and Randy Orton. Now, they could add that potentially on SmackDown. Who knows? That could be an option. But if they do this again, if you do the callback, Cena slaps the referee disqualifies him, John Cena retains. I don't know if you can get away with that in 2025, the way you could in 2008 at that time. But because remember, that wasn't the main event of that show, by the way. That wasn't the match that went on last. I'm trying to remember what that was, but I should know that. I think it's Triple H and somebody. But that is a little bit of a different scenario, right? This is your main event. This will go on last at the show. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. And so, knowing that, you have to give them more than just that. So even if they do the callback, you have to then probably do a scenario where, let's say, one of the general managers or whoever restarts the match, and then you keep going. Cena thinks he's outsmarted Orton. He's called back to this fun little callback from 17 years ago, thinking he's outsmarted Randy Orton. But it's restarted. We have to have a winner, right? We know how this goes. We've seen it many times. But then Cena still has to win some way, somehow. And so you would think, unless Travis Scott's showing up again, who knows? Maybe that's Travis Scott's new thing. That's the gimmick. He just comes out in main event matches on PLEs and interferes. Maybe that's going to be it. But if it's not the case, how does Cena win? That's what I'm curious to see. Because obviously you're going to protect Randy Orton a little bit. I don't think Cena's going to beat Orton straight up. I'd be surprised. It's possible, but I'd be surprised. Because I think this is the way they're doing it, right? Where John Cena's got to come up with something because he's not the way he used to be. And he has to hold on to this championship because he has to retire as the last real world champion. He doesn't want anybody else taking this title from him. So how's it going to go with John Cena, Randy Orton? John Cena's going to win. But how's it going to play out? That's the question. We ask ourselves, Cena retains here and then heads off into the next program, which could be, again, at some point soon, CM Punk, at some point soon, Cody Rhodes. You have to do all those by the end of the year. Not sure what order we're going to get in. R-Truth. Cena's going to destroy R-Truth at some point. That's got to happen soon. So let's find out. But Cena retains in St. Louis. Crowd reaction, atmosphere is going to be incredible. And that will probably tell the story of the rivalry in history between John Cena and Randy Orton. But there you go, guys. There are my thoughts on Backlash 2025. I want to know what you think. Leave your predictions for all 5 matches in the comments. As always, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Join the memberships here, the Tribal Chiefs. You can join, get some members-only content, which we're kind of revamping our ideas there. So you're going to have a lot of new stuff in the membership tier. So again, support the channel. Support me doing more videos and live streams for you guys. I greatly appreciate your feedback as always. And again, let me know your thoughts on WWE Backlash 2025.